the striking off of Roberta Batchelor, a dangerous precedent for NHS workers and freedom of expression. The case of Roberta Batchelor, a Birmingham nurse with almost 45 years of service, raises serious questions not just about professional conduct, but about proportionality, freedom of expression, and the increasingly punitive culture facing NHS workers. Mrs. Batchelor was struck off the nursing register by the Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC, after sharing a series of alleged anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim images on her personal Facebook account in August 2024. At the time, she was employed as a ward manager by University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. This decision has been widely reported as a clear-cut case of racism incompatible with nursing practice. The Workers of England Union fundamentally disagrees, not because you might or might not think the posts were tasteful or wise, that is irrelevant, but because the punishment imposed was extreme, career-ending, unwarranted, and sets a dangerous precedent for every working person in the NHS and beyond. A career reduced to nothing. It would appear that Roberta Batchelor began her working life as a hospital cleaner and worked her way up to ward manager. Over nearly 5 decades, she cared for patients from all backgrounds, earned the respect of colleagues, and in 2015 received a Pride of Nursing Award. None of this was in dispute. There were no allegations of discriminatory behaviour toward patients, no complaints from service users, no evidence of unfair treatment in clinical practice. The case rested entirely on social media posts made outside of work, on a personal account, during a period of heightened political tension. The NMC panel concluded that striking her off was necessary to protect public confidence in the profession. That phrase should alarm every nurse and healthcare worker. It replaces evidence with managing image and justice with reputation management. Freedom of expression and the working class. What is often repeated is that freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences, but that is also open to interpretation. What is less discussed is whether the consequences are proportionate, fair, or consistent, or imposed by the opposite side who does not like what it is hearing. Mrs. Batchelor did not incite violence. She did not name patients or colleagues. She did not use her professional title to lend authority to her views. She shared political and social opinions that many may find offensive, but also many agree with. Those views are widely circulated in public discourse, including by elected politicians and media commentators. The Workers of England Union is clear. Holding controversial or unpopular opinions is not professional misconduct. If it is, then the boundary between employment regulation and ideological enforcement has been crossed. Working people are not brand ambassadors. They are not public relations tools. They do not surrender their civil liberties when they put on a uniform. Anger, context, and human fallibility. Mrs. Batchelor admitted making the posts, but then unfortunately apologised. She described being angry at the time over government decisions affecting pensioners, winter fuel payments, and the removal of benefits from older people. She acknowledged she allowed herself to be caught up in wider unrest and regretfully expressed that she was ashamed of her actions. However, this was not denial or defiance. It was remorse. But did she even need to feel remorse? Was that her best defence? Obviously not. There is a saying in legal circles that says, "A man who represents himself has a fool for a client." If she indeed represented herself, then she probably lost her job because of that. Why? Because accepting fault and remorse can undermine self-defense because they predispose an individual to accept blame or liability prematurely, weakening their ability to assert rights, challenge allegations, or present an objective account of the facts. Her mistake was to assume that regulatory organisations would be reasonable, and that is why she needed an independent trade union, like the WEU, to represent her. If she had a Labour-supporting trade union represent her, who suggested that defence then? Oh my goodness! That defence raises concern of misrepresentation because it implies that Rep also agreed that the nurse had done wrong. It suggests that the Labour-supporting trade union failed to understand that she had a legitimate concern and a right to say how she felt. The Rep thus may have advised her to offer an apology rather than standing up for her basic right in a civic democracy. When she offered her remorse, did the system show any mercy? No, it showed none. Instead of remediation, reflection, or conditional practice, the harshest sanction available was imposed. Erasure. Striking off is supposed to be reserved for those who pose an ongoing risk to the public. In this case, the risk was assumed, not demonstrated. The role of trade unions and the silence of representation. Public reporting does not state which trade union, if any, represented Mrs. Batchelor during her fitness to practice proceedings. The NMC documentation refers only to a CPD agreement between the parties, namely the regulator and the registrant herself. That absence matters. Too often, nurses rely on large professional bodies that are closely aligned with regulators, employers, and government policy. These organisations frequently prioritise institutional reputation over individual members, particularly when a case becomes politically sensitive. And independent trade unions such as the Workers of England Union exist to do the opposite. The Workers of England Union would have robustly defended Mrs. Batchelor, not by excusing or apologising, but by challenging the assumption that personal political expression equates to professional incapacity. Not by minimising words, but by insisting on fairness, due process, and proportionality. A chilling effect on NHS staff. This case sends a clear message to NHS workers: keep your views to yourself. Self-censor. Stay silent. In a health service already strained by understaffing and burnout, this is profoundly dangerous. Nurses are human beings, not automated machines. They experience anger, fear, frustration, and political concern like everyone else. If expressing those emotions, however clumsily, can cost you your livelihood, then we are not regulating a profession. We are policing thought. The irony is stark. The NHS depends heavily on migrant labour, yet also employs thousands of working-class staff who feel economically abandoned and politically unheard. Suppressing that expression does not resolve that tension. It deepens it. Proportionality and public interest. The NMC argued that striking off was required to maintain public confidence. But public confidence is not a fixed or objective measure. It is shaped by media framing, institutional fear, and political pressure. There were other options: formal warnings, mandatory equality training, conditions of practice, suspension with review. None were chosen, and none should have been. Nurses outside of work are individuals with genuine concerns and should be able to express them however they want to. Instead, a 45-year career ended not because of harm done, but because of harm feared. That is not justice. It is risk management at the expense of a worker. Why independent trade unions matter. This case illustrates precisely why independent trade unions are so important. The Workers of England Union, WEU, is not affiliated with political parties, employers, or regulators. Its loyalty is to its members. It defends workers, not as public relations liabilities. WEU believes in freedom of expression, which is protected by the law. It believes disciplinary action must be evidence-based, proportionate and corrective, not punitive and symbolic. It believes that working people deserve representation that does not collapse under media pressure. The Workers of England Union will not shy away from its members who need support. Had Mrs. Batchelor been defended by an independent trade union, such as the Workers of England Union, who would be prepared to challenge the NMC's assumptions, the outcome may well have been different. Our record shows our support for members. A warning, not just a case. This is not just about one nurse in Birmingham. It is about every NHS worker with a social media account, every healthcare assistant, porter, cleaner, nurse, paramedic and administrator who holds opinions that may fall outside of the politically approved narratives. Today it is immigration and religion. Tomorrow it could be industrial action, government policy, or criticism of regulators themselves. If the line between professional conduct and personal belief is erased, no worker is safe. Conclusion. The Workers of England. Union condemns the striking off of Roberta Batchelor as excessive, unjust and politically driven. It represents a failure of proportionality and a threat to fundamental freedoms. Workers need independent trade union that will stand up for them when it is uncomfortable, unpopular and inconvenient. They need representation that understands that defending rights does not mean endorsing every opinion, but the right to express that opinion. If you want to be protected by an independent trade union that puts workers before institutions, the Workers of England Union is here to do exactly that. Ask your colleagues to join us. Stephen Morris, General Secretary, Workers of England Union.